this as of late, John Stewart of Resolute Racing and Middle Ground Capital. John, thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We are doing great. 8:30 in the morning. This is the earliest we've recorded, and I think it's a good idea. We're nice and fresh. But John, why don't we just start off? I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, your business goals for this industry. I mean, you came in, pretty heavy pretty quickly. I kind of wanted to know like if that was the plan. I know you're a fan of the business also. Just kind of give us a little bit of your background and your goals for the business yourself.
Yes, I've been a horse player for about 30 years, and I moved to the Kentucky area when I started working for Toyota and going to Keeneland, as a regular part of that activity. And then started going to Churchill Downs for the Derby, and enjoyed the racing and the gambling aspect of it, and I think I'm a pretty good horse player. And so always thought it was an interesting idea to own horses, but always kind of thought of it as impossible because it's just so kind of mysterious, like the costs around it, and the there's it doesn't, you don't have to be in the industry to see that there's a small percentage of the horses that are successful, and just kind of trying to navigate that whole area and just trying to understand, like, how it all worked and everything. And there's not really like a guidebook or anything, for you to jump in and do that. So, I met Gavin O'Connor. He was dating a girl that worked for me at my private equity firm. And, he was working at Coolmore. He was, doing some bloodstock on the side. And so we bought a horse in 2022 at the sale. And, just kind of like dip my toe into it at that point, and just saw what was happening, and then decided to make it a part of my larger kind of investment strategy. And after seeing some of the struggles that the industry's having with gaining new fans, and specifically on the bloodstock side with going to the sales and looking at a lot of the catalog books, you have a lot of half of horses in there. It's the stallion pedigree's like really good, and then there's a lot of the mares, they're just they haven't had a lot of significance in the background. And then starting to dig into it and seeing a number of horses that we've been exporting, and how that's impacted the industry, and how the industry's moved from a to a breed to sell model. I thought there's an opportunity to kind of come into the industry, focus more on turf than dirt, and focus on breed to racing, and try to play a little bit more on an international scale, because not a lot of American owners, race internationally. So, that was kind of my strategy, and I don't do anything, halfway. And so, when I jumped in, I just decided to jump all the way in.
That's awesome. Okay, so interesting. So I'm forgive me for my lack of knowledge or understanding, but you felt like being able to fill gaps in our pedigrees and going more worldwide rather than staying local, that you would have more success like that
Well,
and go
so
global.
like my end goal is hopefully not going to be determined based on how many races or what races I win. That's not my goal of horse racing. That's a result of what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to build the best broodmare band with the most diversity, and to help the herd in Kentucky. I mean, still majority of racehorses are bred here. And, a lot of our top racehorses for the last 20 years have been leaving the country, indefinitely leaving the state. And it seems like, whoever the highest bidder is, gets a chance to take those horses away. And if we continue down that path, I think that the bloodstock is going to be less and less significant. And when you look at what impact that has on the local economy, I think it could be devastating. So, I'm the kind of person that if you want to do something, if you want to impact something, you do something. And so, I'm not one to like talk about the problems. I'm one to like just start addressing the problem. So, we've already imported mares from 5 continents, and there's only 6 you can, because the 7th one doesn't have any horses on it. So we're bringing really good bloodstock back. I've done a lot of acquisitions in Australia and have a pretty good string of horses down there. And the whole goal, I'm going to race those horses, but it's really about the diversity of the bloodlines. And you go back 2 or 3 generations, and we have the same bloodlines, but then their bloodlines have evolved differently than ours. Same in South America, same in South Africa, same in Europe. And so there's an opportunity to bring some of that diversity back into the pedigrees of our horses, and some of the more significant horses like Danzig in the pedigrees. We don't have a lot. Warfront is probably the only Danzig stallion that's still producing horses today for us. And Danehill was really popular in Australia, and so there's a lot more Danzig bloodlines there. And so I think that's a significant horse in my studies of the pedigrees, and so I'm trying to bring more of that back into the bloodstock.
Gosh, I really, really appreciate everything you said. To be able to make an impact on an entire industry is no easy feat, but I think it's impressive that you're even willing to try, and hopefully have a lot of fun along the way. Obviously, that is.
Oh yeah, we're having lots of fun.
um, okay, what is next?
John, I just wanted to ask, you mentioned that you're going to focus more on turf versus dirt, which is something that is kind of revolutionary in North American racing. And can you just explain to us why you came to that conclusion and what your thought process is behind that?
Well, the international racing game is turf, right? And when you look at the Longines top races in the world, very few of our races in America are even on them, right? Because we don't have the competition that can compete internationally, with our horses. And look, I think the dirt circuit and the Triple Crown, of course, is something that, you definitely want to win as an American owner. But I think that when you look at our horses and how they've evolved, how we bred them to evolve in this kind of breed to sell mindset, we breed these horses that everybody thinks is a big two-turn horse, right?
Mhm.
And they're heavier. Like the number of horses that we geld are higher. All of our metrics are worse, as far as like training. We all know training on the dirt is harder on the horse, but we continue to do it and put, those processes in place. And all the trainers' systems, like even if you have turf horses, they're trained on the dirt. They don't get trained on the turf in America. And so it's a opportunity. And if you look at the stakes races, the number of stakes races, there's actually more turf stakes than there is dirt stakes. And so it's less competitive. And so there's an opportunity to come in, and be super competitive on the turf side, which we already have done and, are doing. And, I want to dominate all the turf, in North America. I want to compete, globally, on the turf. And I want to take the best American horses and race them at, Ascot. I want to take the best American horses and run in Japan and Australia, and nobody does it. And so there's an opportunity, and, we're, not having, a lot of success out of the gate, but we're learning and evolving, and, but someone has to do it if it's going to happen. And so, I get tired of going to Europe and them talking about how much better their horses are than the American horses. It's not really true. It's that we just don't breed our horses to race the same way they do. And so we don't train them to to race the same way they do. And so, I want to win the ARC. I want to win the Guineas. I want to win, the Oaks and the Derby over there. And I want to, win at Ascot, which I think I got a good chances next week with Believing and Rogue Legend. And so, I want to do that. And the attention that I draw is not, people think it's like, I want the attention. It's not really, that's what I want. I think that what people do is they follow success. And I think if you're successful, then people will try to follow that example. I look at golf as a good example. You think back to what a golfer looked like before Tiger Woods was in golf. Go back in the 80s and, early 90s before Tiger Woods emerged, and golfers look like, they just got off the couch, they're smoking cigars, they're fat little pudgy dudes, and and that's what a golfer looked like. Tiger Woods is what he did, not just what he did, on the course, which was really important, but he brought fitness, into golf. And now if you look at the modern golfer, they all are on that model of Tiger Woods. Now, if Tiger Woods had brought that into the game and wasn't successful, would everybody look like Tiger Woods? Probably not. Would fitness be as important as regiment? And the equipment be as important as it is in the game today? I don't think so. So, his impact was because he won. And so I think if you're successful at things, then people try to copy you. And that's the best way to have an impact on this industry, is to show people by doing.
I love that. Both Leah and we work on primarily the breeding side of it, but as breeders and our farm, the farm that I work for, Bonchance Farm, we do also have a fair amount of international pedigrees. We have a small brood mare band, but they're fairly diverse as well. And one of the most frustrating things for me and all of us as a group is when we go to the sale and people will tell us, well, that's a really nice horse. There's just too much turf in the pedigree, or he just looks like a turf horse. And I'm always like, so you don't want to win races? Like, I don't understand. I understand the concept of dirt being king in the Triple Crown series. And obviously, like you said, of course, those are important and they should be something that people want to win. But especially in North America, there's this concept that dirt is the only option, but there's so many options on turf. There's a lot of really good graded stakes races on turf. And most importantly, there's a lot of money on turf. And if you go to the sale, you're going to spend this amount of money to buy a dirt horse and then maybe win this amount of money, or the opposite with turf horses. So for me to not promote the turf racing in North America has been very, very strange since day one. I just never really understood that. So it's really interesting to see someone like you come in at the scale you have and say, I'm going to focus on turf.
And here's the funny thing too. I think the industry, one of the handicaps of the industry is all of the experience that everybody has, right? And so I come in and I see it differently, and that's what I do in my private equity business. So I buy companies all the time, and my background was automotive. I don't buy just automotive companies. I buy companies that are in every different industry. I got, precast concrete companies. I've got all kinds of different companies. I own 222 factories all over the world, and they're all in different markets. And so, but they're all manufacturing at the end of the day. So that, that's the common link to all of them. And so I have to learn the industry and like what is going on in the industry and that dynamics of it, because, me and my team, we're the chairman, board, and we're the majority of the board for all these companies. And so you have to, go in and learn. But a lot of times people in the industries, they only know what they have done. And and again, they follow success. So they do things the way everybody did. When I first got in the game, I asked the trainers, why do you work as horses out at 5 o'clock in the morning and they race at 1 o'clock in the afternoon? Like, why are you not training the horse when it's racing? And they're like, well, back in the day, you used to have to train on the same tracks that you raced on. And so they try to get the training out before racing started. But okay, well, that's not the case now. Like I was just at Keeneland, watching horses run this morning. There's no racing today. Why are they racing? Is everybody working their horses out first thing in the morning? Well, people say, oh, it's hot, it's the heat. Well, they race in the heat. You would think an athlete, you'd want to train them in the conditions they're going to run in. Yeah. And so the biggest observation I have of the industry is we expect the animals to be athletes, but we treat them like farm animals 95% of their life. And, you have to evolve, in that thinking. And so, and part of that just comes to, like we don't do any cross training on the horses. Every horse goes through the same training. Like they do the same thing. I mean, like I'm sure that there's a lot of, horsemanship, and I'm not a bang on the trainers at all, but, they jog 6 days a week, and then they breeze once a week, and then they start at a 3/8 and then, like, okay. And if they do that, okay, then they go the next and they go the next, but we all know that every horse is different. I mean, Goodnight Olive, 2-time Eclipse champion, Breeders' Cup champion, she didn't win a race till she was almost 5 years old, and so it took a long time for her to develop. But the training programs, everybody goes in, to the breaking programs that, right after the sales. And then they're all going into that system, and then they're all getting pushed. And the only way a horse ends back up on my farm from a trainer is injury. Like nobody ever sends one back and says, oh, you know what, this one needs to mature a little bit. It's just not there. They all come back injured. Whereas in Australia, they train for 2 or 3 months. The horse takes 2 or 3 months off. They actually get on the horses and trail ride them. The thoroughbreds, they trail ride them. They ride them through creeks and through, cross country and do different things, with the horses. And again, I'm not saying what they do is better, but they're having good results as well. And the tolerance for people to do things differently in this industry in North America is zero. Just nobody, wants to, try something different. And I told my team at one point, because they kept telling me, no, you can't do this. It was even like we want to build fence, right? So we bought the farm. We need to build fences. And my farm manager and Gavin are like, oh, John, we got to hire this certain person to build our fences. Like everybody hires this person, and you got to get on his schedule. And so we had him build the fences, and man, they were expensive. And I was, I'm like, guys, like living on a farm, you have to know how to build fences. Like you need to do this yourself. And so they're like, oh, nobody builds their own fences anymore, John. And I'm like, well, I'm not everybody. So I'm like, I'm like, we bought all the equipment, and I told him, I said, this is what you do. I said, go hire somebody that's built fences before, some older person that knows what they're doing. Go on the back of the farm and start building the fences. And if it doesn't work out, tear it down, build it again, and they never had to tear anything down. And then they had that capability. But they would fight with me about that, when we first got started. And I finally, at one point, I got so fed up and I said, I'm just telling everybody right now, if you want to do things like everybody else does things, let's just sell everything right now. And I'm out, because I don't want to do it that way. I'm going to do it different. Like, I'm looking at where there's opportunity to do things differently. And and when someone tells me that I can't do it, it just makes me want to do it more. So, like, it
Yeah.
that's how it works.
You remind me so much of my father. When we started in this business, we just had a handful of mares boarded at a farm with a manager that we trusted, and they would sell our horses. And my father was like, we should be doing that ourselves. Like, why can't we just sell our own horses? And it was like, well, we don't know what to do,
What do you mean?
It's a learning curve. They're from the oil business, the oil industry, but they're in service, they're a vendor as well. So it's the same concept. And it's been really fun to have that principle and that mentality that you can save a lot of money if you do it yourself.
We don't use any bloodstock agents.
Yeah.
If you want to know who buys all of our horses, it's me and Gavin and Chelsea, and predominantly Chelsea. I think vetting is a racket.
My God.
We talked about that. So we're going to have a whole episode on vetting eventually, because we talk about this all the time. And you're very right.
Yeah.
It's a racket. I mean, like, I'm not saying that there's not stuff wrong with the horses, but after owning horses, you can have stuff wrong with the horse, and 2 weeks later, there's nothing wrong with the horse. And then you can have a horse that there's nothing wrong with it, and 2 weeks later, everything's wrong with it. So, vetting the horses at the sale, I think all it does is it gives your competition in the seller, it lets them know the horses you're serious about. Then then you're for that seedy part of the industry, which I don't understand why it still exists, where owners can bid on their own horses, and you have the auction houses bidding against the reserve and not telling you, which is, to me, dishonest. It's dishonesty. I was at one of the auction houses, and I think I had bid like 600,000 for a horse, and then it got to like the next increment, and I said no. And then they were like, next thing I know, they're backed all the way back down and said, oh, no, sorry, we were wrong. It's at 490 and it's yours. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I walked up to them at the auction house, and I just gotten in the industry, and I said, I'm going to tell you this right now. That happens to me again here, I'll never buy another horse here. Like, I don't do business that way. And, you go to a car auction or an art auction, you're not allowed to bid in the auction if you own the piece. You have to sign an affidavit that says you don't have any ties to the owner to be able to bid in it.
Whoever it was heard that John Stewart comes to buy his horses, not to bid on his horses. So they were trying to take advantage of that situation.
Well, I had that happen at Saratoga. There was a young consignor, and I had tweeted about his horse. And, and then he comes up to me and he goes, well, nobody's going to buy the horse because they think you're going to buy it, and no one wants to bid against you. And I said, okay, how much do you want for the horse? And he said, 350,000. I said, okay, I'll bid it up. I'll bid it to 350. And if I buy it, I buy it. I bid it to 375. And so I look over at Chelsea and I'm like, okay, he should be happy now. It's at 375. And so the next bid was 400, and it was to me, and I shut it down, and it was him. Yeah. It was him that was trying to bid me up on the horse to 400. No. I was trying to do him a favor, to buy, and I was willing to buy the horse. I wasn't trying to run the crowd up, but I was willing to buy the horse for 350. It was him, and it was his consigners. It was their first horse they'd ever bought, and he ended up doing that to them. And here I am trying to be a good player. So if you notice at the auctions, I actually don't bid till the last. Like, I wait till the bidding clears out. I pick the horses I want, and then I see where the bidding goes, and then I just come in at the end. And usually I'm the last bid, on the horse, because I let it kind of run out and let all that kind of play out in it. But again, there's just so much of the and then the whole industry is engaged on 5% of everything. There's no contracts for anything, I put incentive programs in for my trainers and my jockeys. Like jockeys, jockey breaks a maiden for me, they get a $10,000 bonus. Jockey wins a grade 3, they get a $25,000 bonus. They win a grade 2, they get a $35,000 bonus. They win a grade 1, they get a $50,000 bonus. They win the Kentucky Derby, they get a $500,000 bonus. I mean, so I put targets on the races I want to win, and then that's how you drive behavior in the industry. Because if Jose Ortiz or Flavian or Irad, they ride multiple horses that end up in these top stakes races. And if they think they have 3 horses in the race and they can make more money riding my horse, and they think my horse has a chance to win, who are they going to pick?
That's a good call. That's not
right. And as a breeder, like that, the prize money doesn't mean anything, in the grand scheme of things. It's the value. Like you have a mare like Excellent Truth. She's finished twice in grade 1s. That's great. Finishing first in the grade 1 makes her so much more valuable. That $50,000 that you put up, for her to win that, in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing.
Heck yeah. That is such a good point. I'm going to take some notes over here.
Kind of on that same train of thought, you mentioned earlier that you use the term mysterious as, describing how it's like getting into this industry as someone who's coming into it totally new. And I think that is something that we as an industry have done a really bad job of addressing. I do think we've gotten a little bit better about it in the last few years, but if you had to give advice to somebody who is new into the industry or even new into pinhooking or buying horses from the sale, what is the top advice that you would give them?
I would tell them to find somebody in the industry that they trust that can just help them explain it to them. I would tell people that are new in the industry, don't buy yearlings. Don't go into a group that's buying yearlings. You're just going to get frustrated. You're going to get frustrated by injuries. You're going to get frustrated by them making it to the track. You're much better, putting your money into a horse that's already had success on the track, even if you have to put more money up, and you see, we do a lot of that. We buy a lot of horses off of the track. And I think that's a, more successful, pattern, if you look at it that way. And, you have to buy at all of them. But if you're just starting out, I think, that's a good thing to do. And, we're offering to do that. We have a program that is for new people in the industry and new breeders that we're launching this next year. So if you're a new breeder in the industry, or you're a small breeder that's struggling, we'll actually keep your mare on the farm for free. We're working with stallion farms to get some, heavily discounted covers on stallions for people, and using our purchasing power and in the industry to be able to do that. We'll keep your horse in the foal. We'll fold it on our farm for free, no bills, and we'll keep it there until it's weaned for free, to help you kind of get up and running and get started, and help people in the industry get started. If you want to go to the auction and you want to buy horses, you can go with our team, and our team will give you free advice. We won't charge you anything. We'll help you, with what your budget is, what you're trying to select, those types of things, and we'll help you to do that. And, we can't do it to 100 people. We don't have the room on the farm to do that, but, we'll probably end up with, 8 or 10 mares next year that are, mares that I'm doing on a pro bono basis for people that are trying to get in the industry, or for small breeders that maybe are having trouble, and if we can help them, make that first cycle of getting the horse, to the sales or to the races, and help, get them over that edge and make it less intimidating, then we can try to do that. And you know what? I think every big farm has a capacity to do that. I think everybody does. And, then you can start to, it's kind of like having an internship, right? With young employees, but you're doing it with future horse owners. So that's, so again, we're trying to take action. I hear people all the time saying, well, you work with Chad Brown and Bill Mott, but I also work with Riley Mott and Will Walden and, and others, that are just starting out in the industry. And then again, people said this is an issue, so we're trying to do something about it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's one thing you'll find, and I think it's impressive that you're willing to do this. And one thing you will find is a lot of farms do, like my family owns our farm, so they're giving us a leg up by kind of doing something similar. But a lot of people they'll pinhook a yearling for their team, for the grooms over on the farm.
Yeah, we do that a bunch, Chance. Yeah.
It's fun to see those things come to fruition. And one thing we need to work on is getting the story out there, right? Like getting on social media and pushing out these stories of of these opportunities that we're giving the people that aren't quite here yet, that are trying to get there. And that's
Yeah.
one that really drew me about you guys when I came across your Instagram and the event that you did at Shaw 10. And you made the jerseys and the playing cards for Goliath, and you are doing the brunch and babies tours and the fast horses, fast cars tours, and trying to just bring people inside. And I know it's not for the money, right? It's for the love of the sport. And I just didn't know if you wanted to comment on that and maybe tell us how they can get in on this potential kind of mentorship with you guys next year when it launches.
Well, yeah, just follow us. More details will be coming. We did, we do events at all the big races. So like, Breeders' Cup, I got a suite for 120 people and just brought fans for free. The Derby, I got a suite for 80 people and it was all fans of racing that got to go and use that space. I'm trying, it's fun. It's fun to entertain people and have a good time and do those things. We did the brunch with the babies on the farm.
Yes.
I talked to Keeneland about it. I think it would be really cool to do it when spring meet and have the people park at Keeneland and have buses pick them up and take them to several farms and do it like a progressive brunch.
Idea.
Right. And then take them to Keeneland. Those people go to Keeneland and maybe there's a special area, set up, but just, you drive down the road. If you're not in the industry, you drive by the horse farms and you see these big iron gates. You see, I'll be honest with you. I didn't know that you could pull up and the gates would open at most of the farms. I didn't know that, and
I did a few times. Some of them open.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah, some of them open, but I didn't, but it's intimidating. It's intimidating to people. And, so I'm trying to, I'm just trying to let people experience it alongside me. Yeah, I haven't made a penny off of the fan events or, any of those activities. We sold merchandise at Belmont. All of it went to aftercare, for the horses. I think branding is a huge opportunity. Like you can't go to the Derby and you can't buy a hat with the name of the horse that's running in the race. And what do people like to do when they go to big events? They like to buy souvenirs.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you can buy a bunch of Churchill Downs stuff, but nothing against Churchill Downs. But like, I'm not there to see Churchill Downs. That's not the only thing I'm there to see. And so, maybe I'm a Bill Mott fan and I got to go and he wins. Boy, it'd be neat to buy a Mott racing hat. And, I wear the same hat that Bill Mott wears when he trains horses. And then when you go to work on Monday, you can put that hat on and goes, hey, I was rooting sovereignty on, or a Godolphin hat or Coolmore or whoever, and the fans don't have an opportunity to do that. We don't even give them an opportunity to do it.
Yep.
And I had a fan that said that on this weekend. He said, I come to these races and there's no way to be a fan. And he said, I'm wearing Resolute racing hat because you guys have one for sale. I didn't even know who you guys were, And so, it's the fans want it, there's big fans of these horses. And we have such a valuable thing we have access to as owners in the industry. And we don't take advantage of it at all. And it's because everybody's focused on breeding to sell. They're not focused on the fans.
And winning, winning. It's getting in the winner's circle. There's like this addiction, which I love. It keeps us here.
Look, I want to win when my horse is in a race. Don't get me wrong, but I remind myself all the time. But that doesn't define us, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't define what we do, And winning doesn't define a horse. There's a lot of unraced mares that have produced some high quality horses. And, so if you're going to miss out, if you don't, it's just like, you take two, like, big athletes, pro athletes, and maybe two of their children end up being athletic and one of them's not, it's just, they're just not athletic. Or they're not even into it. They don't even like it. And people, think that we can make these horses race. They're crazy. If you ever seen a horse, like if you're a fan and you've ever seen a horse at the gate and they don't want to go in, they're not going in. They'll literally flip over backwards before they'll go in if they don't want to go in. You can't make a 1,300-pound animal do anything, right?
I had someone
Wild to me.
they thought we forced horses to breed. I'm like,
It's wild to me that people think that a 150 or even 250-pound human being can affect the actions of a 12 to 1,400-pound animal with teeth and hooves.
No, I mean,
we're not making them do anything. We couldn't physically if we tried.
No, just dead weight, right? Like if they just stand there, Like that's
Yep.
the way the horse like tells you it doesn't want to do. It just stands there. It doesn't have to throw a fit. It just stands there and just looks at you. And I'm not going. I'm not gonna. If they don't want to go with you, if you ever try to lead a horse, if the horse doesn't want to go, he's not going. Like you're not making him do it. You could hit him with a whip or whatever. You could do whatever you want. He's not going because of that.
Yeah.
Like and so it's but I love it. I think it's a great opportunity. I am competitive. Like I do want to win. There's people in the industry I want to beat more than than winning sometimes. And but I think that I'm trying to do it my way. I'm trying to do my own thing. Me and my team, we're trying, like we're trying to do it with integrity. We're trying to do it with respect. Like I'm not slamming the history of horse racing. Like I respect it more than anything. And if you talk to the horsemen in the industry that I've gotten to know, the other owners, I don't tell them they're doing it all wrong. I just try to, ask them. I ask lots of questions. Like I try to understand, like, why do you do this? And, and sometimes getting them to think about it and get them to say, you know what, that's a good idea. Or, some of the data analytics. I bought Pedigrees 360, the pedigree software business in Australia. Yeah, we offer a free 6-month membership, and so if anybody wants that, they can go to Pedigrees 360 and you can get access to that.
Agree. 60.
360.com. And I bought it because it's a really good tool, but we're going to make it a better tool. So I'm putting a lot of money into it and making it better, but making it better for the trainers. I want as an owner, you can go in, you can enter your horses, it tracks their conditions, and then it tells you what races that they're eligible for, right? And then you can kind of pattern out like what races you want for those horses, and then based on that horse's win rates, you can see what that horse could make, like in that year. And you kind of have like a dashboard as an owner where you have that data in front of you, and hey, I have a better ROI on with Chad Brown than I do with XYZ trainer, right? Or when this rider rides for me, I make more money. And but starting to put all that data and stuff together, it's all out there, but people just don't really put it all together and use it.
Yeah, that brings me, and we are going over 30 minutes, and I don't care if you have the time. I have one more question. Well, we have a couple more questions, but one more for me.
I've got like 7 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, Dean. I was watching one of your reels, and they do in Europe, they do a lot of wearables, and they do a lot of technology based on the wearables that the riders wear, that the horse is wearing when they're training. Do you want to just mention a little? We need more of that in general in our industry, and I would love for you to comment.
Oh yeah, the jockey cams are great. That most of our major races now, the jockeys have the jockey cams on, and there's not enough dissemination of the information out there. They usually send me the videos for my horses after the races. I try to post everything. I get trainers that call me and say, I didn't mean for you to post my video of me giving training comments on my horse. I'm like, well, it's not your horse, it's my horse. And if you're going to train for me, just get used to that, because that's what I'm going to do. Next time you send me a video, if you don't want something in there, don't say it on video. Right?
It sounded like the trainer was saying that believing himself, he said that something he maybe it's not a wearable. Maybe I was thinking it was wearable, but it was like he was progressing based on the statistics that were coming out.
Yeah, so well, I mean, Coolmore, they back the Stride Safe technology, and so all of the horses in training for them have those on. And it's funny, as an owner, most of the horses like in training have those on, and people don't even know it. And so, but you can go to them and get all the data. I got all the data for my horses, and it's actually very accurate. It'll tell you, like, if a horse, they'll tell you if a horse has a problem in his right hind from the Stride Safe data, and it backs up with what the vet tells us. So anytime a horse comes off the track for me, one of the things that I do is the horse goes to Dr. Sutter, Wes Sutter, and he goes completely through the horse anytime they come back to the farm. They go completely through them. And I've had some trainers tell me, John, don't do that, because you'll start treating stuff that's not a major issue. but I want all the information that I have. I want all the information that's available. And if we're bringing them back for a break, but they maybe had the starting of a condylar fracture, like I had a horse that had that happen, and we were able to treat it, and and keep it from becoming an actual condylar, because Dr. Sutter and the work that he did. And even before we retire a horse, we have CAT scans done, if they're having problems and they're popping shins all the time. And, and before we put them back in training, we'll have their legs CAT scanned and see, is it bone disease that's actually the problem, or is there some bigger problem? So we're spending probably a lot more money on vet. And, I'm backing Dr. Sutter's program that he's doing with another doctor out of Colorado State, where what they're doing is, and they're going to start it this year in the yearling sales, but I'm like supporting it with, they bought a human grade CAT scan. It's the first one in the state of Kentucky. And what they're going to do is they're going to take horses that are yearlings, and they're going to scan them every month to see how their bodies are developing and how they're responding to training, for us to help with breakdowns in the future and just improving the health of the horses. And so we're sponsoring that, and we're going to allow all of our horses to be scanned and trained, and then we're paying a lot of the money that funds the CAT scan to come into the state. And there's just a lot of opportunities for other owners to get involved, and there's a lot of opportunities for new people to get involved in the business. And again, I have more resources, so I've been able to do it at a different scale, but you can still do the same thing, that I've done. I bought horses, I bought Goodnight Olive for $6 million. Okay. I bought Ravina for $8,000, at public auction. And she's a good mare, right? And so, and I bought some really good, I bought a 2 times grade 3 winner, in our Cali Kim for like $230,000 at a digital sale. And digital sales in America, number one place to get value for your money is the digital sale. If you want to buy yearlings, go to the July sale. Don't go to the Saratoga sale, and don't go to the Keeneland book 1, book 2, book 3. There's a lot more, horses that come out of book 4 and book 5. There's a lot of good horses. I was the number 1 owner buying in July sale last year, and got a lot of really, really good horses, out of that sale. So, you can't expect anybody to give you anything in life. You got to work for it. And if you want to get in this industry and you want to be successful and you want to try to change the industry, this industry has a lot of opportunity in it. And, I encourage people to get involved, because I think as an investor, I think there's an opportunity to make a really big return,
Yes.
by doing things differently. It's not, people are like, oh, what's the biggest way to make a millionaire, start as a billionaire and get in the horse industry? If you're stupid, if you're,
Yeah.
like, and there are some people, in the industry, and they come and spend millions of dollars a year, and all they are trying to do is make stallions and win races. If that's your program, that's not going to work. But if you want to win, if you just want to race horses and have fun, you can do that. But you can do it on a much smaller scale, as well. And I think it was Jason Worth. He only owned 10% of Door Knock, right? But he had it. It doesn't matter how much. I own 2% of Storm Boy, right? I went down the Golden Slipper in Australia, and I would have been just as happy as he won, if I won 100% of him, owning 2% of him. And so, there's opportunity for people to participate in the industry, and we have to make that more.
I love it.
Thank you so much. If you have a couple more minutes, we would love to ask you our little hot seat questions before you.
Sure. Yeah.
We can I'll combine them into the same question. So we ask everyone at the end of the episode who the horse was that got you first interested or hooked into the horse racing business, and then who is your current favorite, either horse that's currently racing or maybe recently retired, that our listeners would recognize.
Yeah, I mean, it's a true story. People are going to think this is kind of rigged, but I think, like, the horse that really kind of hooked me on horse racing, I was a gambler and everything, and I think the transition for me was Goodnight Olive. And I bet on that horse and won so many times. And then when I showed up at Night of the Stars, I wasn't even there to buy her. And then when I found out we could buy her after she just won the Breeders' Cup, I was like, you can't show up after the NBA Finals and buy Kobe Bryant, or right? And
Yeah.
like I can walk out to the paddock in any time that I want to, And I can stand there with this horse that I like just admired so much on the track. And, and now she's, I have degraded her to the point that now if she sees me, she starts pawing for treats, right? The 2 times eclipse
Spoiled.
winning horse, paws in the stall for treats, when she sees me coming. And so, I think, she definitely was one that, as I was making the transition, was the horse that, really kind of inspired me to the point that I paid $6 million for, just so she didn't end up in Japan. That's why I bought her. And then, for me, like Puka, what she's done, just in the couple of years that we've owned her, it just shows everybody, like sometimes you just need to be lucky, right? She RNA'd. Like everybody could have bought her. Like all of the smart people in the industry could have bought her, right? She RNA'd for $2.8 million. We had a buyer offers $20 million for half of her. And so yeah.
Everything's
No. I don't know. There's a lot of people.
39% of her.
Well, there may be something. We may do something like that. But I did my racehorse to give people that opportunity. To get into the game. But I truly love my horses. I love my horse George. He's my favorite, and he's my quarter horse that I ride. My blue run quarter horse. And I try to ride him twice a week and on the farm. And it's more for me than winning races. It's just about being a part of the industry that I love.
It really shows, John. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit more inside of Resolute Racing and your business and your love for the Thoroughbred. Until next time, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Thank you.